Aw, yeah. Welcome back to another episode of Drafts with Jordan and Josh. I am one of your hosts, Mr. Jordan Plucker at PFF_Jordan. With me, as always, is my better half, Mr. Josh Liskowitz at PFF_Josh. How you doing there, buddy?
I am rested and ready to go after a wild weekend. I am ready for some football, man. Let's get at it.
Yeah, don't tell us about what happened during your weekend. I am also
what happened in the weekend stays in the weekend for sure.
I am also excited for some football. Again, we got some preseason action kicking off. I always like to watch the rookies. That's me selfishly, Josh. I've kind of been queuing up the draft guide from last year. When I watch these guys too, just to kind of see some of the numbers. If you make sure you guys are going to ProFootballFocus.com and signing up for either PFF Edge or PFF Elite. There are two subscription services. Either one of them will get you access to the draft guide that Josh and I use for every show. But, I mean, again, just a wealth of other things, too. You get access to our premium content. You get access to awesome fantasy content. So all kinds of stuff. So go check that out. And then also if you sign up for an account with either FanDuel or DraftKings and make a $10 deposit, you can get Edge for free, which is awesome. That's like a $40 value. Yes, do that at profootballfocus.com/FanDuel17 or profootballfocus.com/DraftKings17. And then also, Josh, we're going to continue on with our PFF Elite raffle. So we give away access to a PFF Elite subscription to everyone. So it's like this week on the podcast, we'll be giving away subscription to the Elite package, which includes access to the signature stats, like you mentioned, award-winning fantasy football analysis and tools, much more, worth more than $200. So to enter to win, leave a review on iTunes and be sure to include your email address or Twitter handle. And Josh, we have a winner. We have a winner from last week, and the Twitter handle is at @OHorseBrown.
Oh, Horse Brown. All right.
So
congratulations,
Horse Brown. You are the new winner of PFF Elite, and now you can follow along when I tell you to turn to your draft guides. What else we got going on, Josh?
But wait, Jordan, there's more.
What?
We actually have a second winner because I'm going to blame it on you, exclusively on you. Damn it, Jordan. You forgot to announce last week's winner, too.
Oh, man. That's my bad.
Also winning the free subscription to the Elite package is at Beaston25_8. So we've got a horse, we got Beaston, and we've got some subscriptions. And
it's like
the happiest time since
it's a
Bing Crosby
barnyard
with Danny K. So, yeah, we're in good shape here. I also want to go again. I've talked about this the last couple of weeks, but it's still a lot of fun, having a lot of fun with this. And that's my new favorite app on my phone, Draft. And again, 10-person draft. I think you can do 6 persons now, which is a little crazy. 12-person draft. What you're doing is you sign up for a league, and there's money involved. So you can win money in these. It's best ball format. So all you're doing is you are drafting your team for the entire season. So go to your draft your team. Don't worry about setting your roster every week. Don't worry about free agents. Don't worry about trades. Don't worry about injuries. What you draft, that's your team. Set it up and keep track of it throughout the year, and you can win some big money. It's pretty cool, man. You can do entries as low as $3. Some are is I see one here. I'm looking at the homepage. You can do $100 and win some real big money in there. So really cool thing that they have going on at Draft. And just download that app and have some fun, man. It's a great little format to be able to stay involved in fantasy without having to do all the hassle of updating constantly and remember where your roster is every week.
I don't know if you know this about me, Josh, but I like fun.
You do like fun. That's
good. I do like fun. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's cool. I'm glad that's fun. So the Draft. Yeah, and a great name too. Great name for that thing.
Yes. We are partial to Draft, aren't we?
a little partial. All right, everybody, and that includes you, Josh. Turn to page 94 in your preseason draft guide as we start on the top wide receivers for the 2018 draft. Josh, I think it's important to say that there are some talented players in this draft class, but we had probably within the last 5 years, we probably had two like almost historically good draft classes at wide receiver, right? So I can't really expect these guys to be that great.
No, that's fair, but at the same respect, I really enjoyed looking at this class. I got a good look of it pretty early in the process, earlier this summer, and so it was nice revisiting it again. But there's definitely some guys toward the top that I'm pretty interested in, and to be quite honest, there's probably some guys that are expected to be toward the top that I was a little disappointed in. So unique class, man. Let's get into it.
All right, let's start at the top there with Calvin Ridley, a guy I know that you like his playing style. Decent size, around 6'1", 190. He's basically the feature target there in that Alabama offense, but again, they still haven't. It's not like they're really pushing the ball down the field to him a whole lot. But they try to get to him the ball in different ways. But again, he had 11 catches of 40+ yards for the last 2 years. It would probably be a lot higher in a different offense. A lot of times his numbers I don't think are going to like stack up to maybe somebody who plays in like a Big 12 offense or something like that. But as far as just projecting to the NFL, like why do you think that Ridley is the top guy right now in this class?
Yeah, I think he does everything. I think he plays bigger than he's listed. I think he's just under 6'1" and around 190 pounds. I think he plays a lot bigger than that. He can be physical at the top of the stem, and his explosion is second to none. He can run tight, precise routes. Very impressed with that, more so than I really thought I would be. And I just think he's a danger all over the field, whether he's catching short passes, little screens, and making those quick cuts to make guys miss and get into the open field, or stretching the field vertically, which he's also very capable of doing with his blinding speed. I think he's the total package. And obviously one of the knocks on him is the fact that he's going to be 23 years old in December, even though he's a true junior. But that being said, even though he's a couple years older than some of these other guys are going to be, I think he's well worth a top 15, top 20 pick, and I fully expect him to be going there.
Wow. Yeah, he impressed me when I watched him. I liked his ability to make, his body control and ability to track the ball and make twisting catches downfield. And then also, as you mentioned, he can push DBs around. He's got a good stiff arm. He runs like a running back almost. So there's you add that into his route running ability and things like that. Yeah, there's a lot to like about Ridley. But again, his numbers probably are never really going to truly bear out how talented he is, right, in that offense in its current form.
No, that's fair, but at least he's still getting the targets. And we've had some issues with Alabama receivers in the past where they're just not getting the volume at all. And certainly that was the issue with one of their top guys that came out last year. But, he still had well over 100 targets each of the past 2 seasons, 237 total in 2015 and 2016. So he's getting the ball sent his way. It's just that with the quarterback they have now and with the scheme, it's not going to be a lot of pro style or downfield type throws.
All right, let's move on to another SEC 6'1" wide receiver, and that's South Carolina's Deebo Samuel. Which we talked about him on one of the first episodes, right? He was one of your guys, I think, right?
He was one of my guys. Yeah, I love Deebo. He's so much fun to watch. I think there's a lot of polish to his game in terms of his ability to sell routes, running at full speed, making tight cuts, consistently catching with his hands. He only dropped 2 of 61 catchable balls last year. I think he's a really exciting player. He's got size, around 6'1", 208. So he's got some nice bolts to that frame, and he's got the speed and explosiveness that you want as well. Again, like Ridley, a total package guy, maybe a little more polished, maybe not quite as explosive, but considering everything you get with him and the fact that they have a young quarterback who's entering his true sophomore season that I think himself shows a lot of promise, I'm really excited to see what we see from the quarterback and from Deebo Samuel this year. I think both could be due for huge, huge years, and I think Deebo Samuel's right in that mix to be a potential late first-round pick.
Yeah, that quarterback was fun to watch on the snaps that I got to see. Yeah, Deebo really impressed me with his ability to run like corner routes. in deep routes, because he would get around the DB really quickly at the line, and then, he was able to position his body, on top of the DBs basically. So the DB was behind him, and then, for at that point it was, pretty easy. So he ended up catching 55.6% of his deep targets. So that was 10th best in the nation last year. So, again, a deep threat and a guy who can also, make people miss. He forced a missed tackle on 26.7% of his targets, which was 5th best amongst draft eligible receivers. So again, a lot to like, Josh. Good choice in your guy.
Yeah, and I think one of the funny things, you look at our write-up on him and you look at his areas to improve. First one is he'll be featured in game plan for by opposing defensive coordinators. So how's he going to produce in that respect? So let's read between the lines. We're not really saying that that's an area to improve. That's just saying that he's such a big threat. Teams need to game plan for him, probably more so than they've done in the past. So that's really just as much a strength as anything else, that he's going to be receiving that kind of attention. And certainly in the eyes of the NFL, it's going to be a good thing that he's going to be, teams are going to be keying on him more, because that's going to give him a better feel for what he's going to be able to do at the next level. So, and then you look at the other issue we had with him is, well, he had his moments in contested situations. He could stand to be a little more physical at the top of his routes and at the catch point. That was something that maybe there wasn't full consistency of, but again, it's not like some other guys where, well, like even with Calvin Ridley, 16 drops in 2 years, that's a clear issue, but there's no clear, huge red flags with Deebo Samuel, which you have to love.
All right, moving on to the Big 12, which we love, actually, no, it's not. What are they in? SMU? They're not the Big 12. What conference?
No,
is
they're
that?
not Big 12.
Why was it in their Big 12?
Are they USA or I don't know? I assumed you were talking about the next one.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, my bad. I was kind of I got my schools mixed up.
Well, when you say a school in Texas, chances are you have a good shot if you say Big 12.
But anyways, we're going to go to SMU, the non-Big 12 school, and talk about Courtland Sutton, who is a big guy, 6'4", and like 218 is what we have him listed at right now. Not saying that is what he is exactly, but again, a big target. Josh, really productive last year. I mean, he saw 129 targets last year. He ended up with 10 touchdowns. He did have 5 drops, but again, just a big frame, a big catching radius. You've seen Courtland Sutton a bit more than I have. What do you like about him?
Yeah, definitely not the twitchiest type. Certainly not the level of athlete that the prior two we discussed. But at the same time, I think he's that big body possession guy you want. I think there's some versatility with him in terms of being able to line him out at the X, put him in the slot sometimes, trying to create a size mismatch. I think there's a lot you can do with him. And while I don't think he's maybe a first-round caliber guy, I think his production and his ability to play with his size in one-on-one situations, I think that makes him a very valuable piece at the next level.
All right, now we will move on to an actual Big 12 wide receiver, and that is James Washington from Oklahoma State. He, unlike many of these other wide receivers that we've mentioned, is actually playing with a pretty decent quarterback. Deebo is, I think, too. But Mason Rudolph is the quarterback there for James Washington, and Mason Rudolph and James Washington kind of specialize on the deep ball. So that's something that they really sort of pride themselves on and sort of separate themselves, amongst the rest of the country. Washington gained 690 yards on deep passes in 2016, which is the sixth most in the nation. So, again, a lot of speed, a lot of deep ball stuff happening there. What do you like about Washington, Josh?
Yeah, certainly the speed and explosiveness, his ability to track downfield, all that is excellent. Certainly, that makes him one of the more dangerous players in the country. But I have to say, Jordan, I was a little disappointed when I went to watch film on him. I don't think there's a lot of nuance to his game at this point. I don't think he's a real precise route runner, and I don't know that that's going to improve based on the scheme they have. I think you're going to see a lot of the same things he's been doing the past 3 years there this year, so I don't know how developed he's going to be in terms of that. And he's not a real physical guy, doesn't really make guys miss after the catch either, so he doesn't really show elusiveness there. He's just a guy that once he's in the open field has game-breaking speed, but So I want to see him be more physical. I want to see him run some tighter routes. I want to see him catch the ball better. He has 16 drops the past 2 seasons combined in just little over 130 catchable balls thrown his way. So that's certainly worrisome because that's a pretty high drop rate there. He's got to be more consistent all around.
All right, we are now going to move on to the West Coast, and we're going to talk about Dante Pettis from Washington. I know this is a guy that you've already got to take a decent look at, too. He's got a thin frame, he's not a real big guy at all. I'm sure you noticed that. Kind of a skinny string bean type guy. He's going to get a lot more targets this year now that John Ross is gone. But again, this is an explosive athlete, at least, in testing, not necessarily saying like playing, but
right.
At least tests as an explosive athlete. 15 touchdowns last year. He averaged 11.4 yards per target. Really, again, he said sort of shifty and, but again, we didn't really. You saw, Josh. You didn't really see necessarily all that athleticism on the tape when you watched him, right?
Yeah, I didn't, and that worries me a little bit. That maybe he has track speed and not playing speed. Maybe it's the way they utilized him just because they didn't have to with the other pieces there. But to me, he looked like a skinny possession type receiver last year. So I'm interested to see how much of his game changes in terms of his usage there, or if we see some of the same things. He definitely grew on me a bit in terms of what I thought about him as the year progressed. But in the same respect, for as prolific and productive as he was, I don't think he was, quite as much of a game breaker as he was being billed out to be. So, again, now that he has to be the guy there, and I think he's due for a pretty big season. But let's see if he can put all the pieces together, or if he still looks at least what I thought in terms of him having those possession type abilities, but not really that game breaking speed and explosiveness.
Yeah, all the attention will definitely be on him. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. Now that Ross is gone. All right, there's a bunch of other talented wide receivers. That's we were just going to kind of stop there for right now. You guys, again, you can read through your draft guides, and there's a bunch more players profiled. With the prevalence of the spread offense, we're just going to continue seeing all these talented wide receivers because there's 5 of them on a field for a lot of these teams, from high school on up. So expect us to keep seeing good wide receiver classes, and we look like we got some talent in this group too. All right, Josh, it is now time for us to go inside the war room, and we are now down in the South. Josh, we are going to start out with the Atlanta Falcons, and really interesting front office, Josh, like the way that they sort of do things, the way they're sort of set up, sort of very distinct from a lot of the other teams. You got Thomas Dimitroff as their GM, you got Dan Quinn as their head coach. One has the most outstanding hair in the entire league front offices, and the other one is like a bald cue ball. So it's kind of interesting to see that offset there. And then you have like Scott Pioli helps out Thomas Dimitroff, and then Steve Sabo is the director.
Also bald.
Steve Sabo is the director of college scouting. So those are like the heavyweights there taking place in there. But Josh, it's really sort of a marriage there between the personnel guys and the coaches, more so than most other teams.
Yeah, some of the more interesting quotes from Dimitroff were very keyed in the idea of splitting the draft, basically half defense, half offense. But more importantly, he said, with Dan's system in place, I feel we have a really definitive way on how we want to approach the type of players we're looking for. And he felt that the scouting staff was particularly excited because they have very few ambiguities as far as what they're looking for. So in other words, what that means to me is they had a very defined process, a defined prospect they're looking for at any position, which lets them narrow it down further. Obviously, Dimitroff is quite a few years removed now, but Dimitroff and others in that group, they're from the New England way of doing things. And we've talked about New England and how they tend to have that smaller draft board where they have very specific players and they'll remove players completely from their board if they just don't fit scheme or height, weight, size, those type of things too. And I think that's what kind of implies that that's what Atlanta does as well. So it allows them to remove guys that don't quite fit and focus and really make sure they get the rest of the picks that they are interested in. Make sure that they really nail those evaluations. And quite frankly, it's paid off for them because obviously they're put in the situation they are. They were one bad play call away from winning the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah, but we've talked on here about teams specifically that, scout for the league. So they want to like scout the, every player and make sure like they want to know how every player is sort of valued by the league. And the Falcons are doing, the exact opposite. I mean, Dan Quinn came right out and said, we don't scout for the league. We're not looking to see what's best for another team. We're seeing what's best for our team. So I think you're right, Josh. There probably is certain height, weight, speed parameters. Corners probably need to be this tall or, have their arms need to be this long, that sort of thing, so they can really fit in their scheme. But yeah, I mean, they're just so tied into, the coaches meet with the scouts and say, hey, listen, we were looking for this, 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 and this. And so, yeah, man, I imagine for the scouts, it's got to be awesome, right?
Oh, totally. I mean, just think about that. If you're able to just eliminate guys based on height, weight, speed, maybe based on on-field, off-field production or questions about them, that's making your job a lot easier if you're honing in on 50, 60% less guys. So I would certainly think for a scout that makes you feel better. Now, I do want to say this is something you and I talked about in the preparation for this podcast. They have to have some kind of measures in place that help them kind of judge what the rest of the league thinks about these prospects in terms of helping them set up their board in a way that they know they're going to get guys in the right position. Because especially when you have a smaller board, let's say they have somewhere between 3 and 28 guys on their board, then they have to know who's going to be taken where, roughly. They have to have a better idea of that. And if it's harder to do that if you're not doing that from a pool of 28 guys where you get kind of an idea what a universal opinion is, and you're saying things like, we don't scout for the league. I don't have a problem with not scouting for the league, but they do have to have some semblance of idea of what the league's general impression is of these players ahead of time so that they know what the value is of each player.
Right. So it sounds like then that a lot of human intel is taking place with talking to people.
I would imagine so, yeah.
And other organizations and just sort of getting a feel for things. Mm-hmm. Some of those... It's interesting seeing some of the advantages that the Falcons may have over other teams. Thomas Dimitroff and Dan Quinn get to fly around in Arthur Blank's private jet and meet with prospects. So I was like, man, how cool would that be? Like, oh, yeah, Josh, we got to fly over here and meet this guy, and that's just a tremendous advantage that they have. And it's an ability for Coach Quinn to really see if he gels with the prospect on like a sort of person-to-person basis. And then the other, advantage that they have, and Josh and I talk a lot about where players come from. And one of the areas in the U.S. where a lot of great athletes and great NFL players come from is Georgia. And these NFL teams are allowed to have these sort of local pro days where, if a player played high school there or played college around there, I forget there's a certain geographical range, but, they're allowed to have this local day. And Thomas Dimitroff said he sat back and had Steve Sabo, the director of college scouting, put a star next to everybody on the board who was from Georgia. And he said that board just like sort of lit up. He was like, we're always going to have a very effective local day because there's always just so many NFL caliber players coming from there. And that's got to be an advantage for them, Josh, compared to like, if the Broncos had a local pro day, there's not that much around Denver compared to, Georgia.
Yeah, I was going to use the example of Green Bay or Buffalo, but the point
same thing.
The point is certainly taken. They're just not going to get the same out of there. I imagine you look at other teams too. I mean, we're going to talk about another team in the AFC South later on. Once we're done with this team, that took advantage of a similar situation with a particular player they drafted. But teams like Miami, got to think those Florida teams in particular. They have some advantage as well, and probably now that we have two teams in LA, I would imagine they'd want to be doing the same as well.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, I mean, again, on a per capita basis, like you said, probably that Miami-Dade County, and then it's like I said, parts of Georgia. Yeah, just the players come from like really certain parts of the parts
New
of the
Orleans
country.
Probably is decent too.
Oh yeah, that's another good one. So going forward, like you said, like the Falcons are really sort of building this thing there and sort of drafting for themselves and drafting for their scheme. And Josh and I had talked about this before, and that can really bite a team in the butt if they don't have continuity. If you're drafting for one scheme and then you're firing your coach, and then the next year you bring in a completely different scheme.
It's a complete reset.
Yeah. So I mean, you really gotta have, you gotta be in a unique situation to do this, and they're looking for, again, specific type of guys that I said are probably going to gel with Coach Quinn and gel what they call the brotherhood. Coach Quinn said, we're not looking for angels. We're looking for guys who are real. We're looking for guys ultimately that fit into this situation, the brotherhood. So they have a very specific thing that they're looking for. Scheme and culture fit's very important to them. So again, they're doing things very distinctly and again, fun to watch.
The tough, hard-nosed, outspoken guys like Matt Ryan, correct?
Yes. All right, so let's look at their picks, Josh. And we've, for the whole time that we've been doing this show, Josh, you and I have been very, very upfront with our biases. Every evaluator's got biases. So we just want to tell you, our listeners, right now that there's a heavy bias that Josh and I and this show, Drafts with Jordan and Josh, are Team Tack. We are hashtag
no question about
team Tack. We love
Tack.
This guy, Takaris McKinley, he was a guy that Josh and I got to talk about a lot last year. I was, basically the Pac-12 analyst, so got to watch him a lot. Just really long, and he's got burst off the line, can bend. So he's got a lot of things that you're looking for physically. But man, Josh, you just got to love the playing style and mentality and tempo that this guy comes with.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And Dimitrov talked about wanting, or him being a high energy, highly competitive, high toughness guy. And that's so obvious when you hear him talk. Obviously he had the crazy interview with Dion when he was drafted by them. They're really, really passionate.
Man.
At points expletive laden, which doesn't bother you and me. Might bother the SEC, but the bigger point is you don't know how any of these kids are going to handle the NFL. You don't know.
Yep.
And so you're banking on understanding their personality, that's going to translate, that they're not going to obviously get in trouble once all of a sudden they have more money than the entire history of their families had combined. That's certainly an issue. But when you listen to Tack McKinley talk on draft night, you know that dude loves football. Mm-hmm. And that dude is going to give you absolutely everything on every single snap he's out there. He is. And so I think you're already putting yourself ahead there, independent of what his skill set is. He's going to do everything that you want for the team. And I just think that's awesome.
Yeah, if for those of you who didn't hear the full story on draft night, he made a promise to his grandma almost essentially on her deathbed that he was going to go D1 and then go to the NFL. So he had that really emotional speech when he was drafted. But yeah, like you said, Josh, just the energy and competitiveness are just there and just coming out of this guy. You know what I mean? Like he's just sort of wired that way. And like you said, he just gives it his all. He's just got. They even mentioned. He's got a lot of the physical traits that they look for in an edge rusher, but they said he's got one of the highest CT grades, which is competitive toughness grades, out of, the whole draft class. Cause he's the guy that would, chase plays down like crazy. And then from my perspective and watching him and, he graded, pretty well as an edge rusher in our system. And he was just one of the guys, again, one of the few players who was capable of taking over games from the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
There was that great strip sack recovery fumble thing that he had against Utah all in one motion. I was just like, wow, sure. I can't believe this guy.
That's a little reminiscent of Vic Beasley, isn't it?
Man, they're going to be such a great combination, aren't they?
I can't wait. A couple weeks ago, we being PFF, did a collaborative article where anybody that wanted to contribute could put in our favorite prop bet for the upcoming season. And mine was Vic Beasley for Defensive Player of the Year because the odds were something ridiculous because he's not really on the radar. And the reason I did that is he won the sack title last year, which everyone loves sacks. That's the sexy stat on defense.
Woohoo.
We know that. Even though PFF didn't have that high of a grade for him because a lot of his sacks were cleanups, they were on extended plays. Even though we didn't have that high of a grade, I think he's going to be able to sustain that, especially when he's got a guy like Takk McKinley across from him. I just think they're both going to feed off each other. Yes, they're both probably going to have times where they're putting up a lot of statistics and it's like cleaning up each other. But, man, ultimately, these guys are going to finish. And I think having a guy across from him like Takk McKinney is going to result in Beasley getting close to 20 sacks every year that they're both healthy. I really do. And you get close to 20 sacks, the years start you're in the Player of the Year conversation, especially when you're on a team like Atlanta that has a juggernaut offense that is going to force other teams to throw constantly and is going to win games. So I think they're going to be a big boon to each other, and I think that sets that entire team up really well. This pick does.
Yeah, that's a great point, Josh. I mean, this pick of McKinley is you're getting more than just the player of Takk McKinley. You're getting the impact that he's going to have on Vic Beasley, on the other side. So I mean, this is the impact of this pick is bigger than just the player that they're getting.
We always talk about with quarterbacks. You want to put your quarterback in a position to succeed as best he can, and part of that is the personnel you're putting around him. Certainly, we've seen that in LA with Jared Goff. I mean, they just made another bunch of trades going to get Sammy Watkins, a true number one wide receiver, and obviously they drafted a bunch. We talked about that when we went over them. Well, you can do the same thing on defense too, and Vic Beasley is certainly the premier player on the defensive side of the ball for Atlanta, and they just made him better by picking Takk McKinley in the first round as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. But yeah, Josh and I are definitely Team Takk and rooting for that young man's success.
Absolutely.
The next pick they took, Josh, was Duke Riley. Inside, they view him as an inside linebacker, can play Mike and Will. Again, in that scheme, they really sort of want quick, fast, athletic, explosive sort of guys to play linebacker there. So that's sort of how they viewed him. A guy that they said run and hit guy, play on all four downs, sideline to sideline. All that stuff, but they had a facility visit with him. Again, just I think a guy that sort of fits their scheme, an athletic special teams guy. I don't think he graded super well for us, though. Did he?
No, he really didn't. And I think it's interesting because they took Deion Jones last year, obviously, who had a great rookie season, but he was another guy that really didn't grade well at all for us last year. Deion Jones didn't his last year at LSU. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was interesting that they kind of went to the well again. I'll be interested to see how that works out, and maybe that eventually turns into something if Duke Riley all of a sudden has a big year again, where we really need to go back and take a look and see what are we missing with these guys, or is it just the way that LSU preps them is different, that independently of our system of grading, that they're succeeding at the next level and not so much at LSU. I think that's going to be an interesting thing for us to watch as a company.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, we'll see what happens there. And some of it could end up being, because I know some of it wasn't some of it like maybe missed tackles.
That was certainly a big part of it. Yeah, definitely with
overrunning plays.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that might have been an issue with that. So we'll see how that all plays out at the next level. All right, the next player they took was Sean Harlow. He played tackle at Oregon State. They drafted him as a guard, but he has the versatility to play guard or center. And again, Josh, this goes back to one of the things that we like to harp on a lot. This guy's dad played in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, he's born to a professional, trained to be a professional. And, obviously they're in a good situation if their pieces stay healthy, certainly on that offensive line. It's where they're not expecting Harlow to come in right away. But they know, based on his bloodlines, that he's probably going to be mentally ready if he is called upon. So that's a big deal for them. Obviously, they're in a position to continue to win games. So getting a guy like him that is able to process the moment a little bit better, possibly, I think that's a good thing for them.
The next player they took is a guy that I liked and you liked as well, and he was fun to watch at the Senior Bowl too, and that's Dante Kazee from San Diego State. just man, he was just so competitive and feisty, and looked like he was fighting wide receivers out there in coverage. Just when we saw him in Mobile. But again, on film, he graded well. He was got his hand on a lot of balls. He was really just a fun player to watch. Played with a lot of energy, and I think he's probably a good fit for what they're trying to do there, at least from that playing mentality. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think in past seasons, or past draft seasons, I should say, because he probably would have been a higher pick, a round or so. I don't remember exactly where he was. You can tell me if you do. But I think he was hurt by the depth of this class, and in particular, certainly his size or lack thereof dropped him down a bit compared to the rest of this class, which was not only huge in the number of draft picks or in prospects, but just huge in the size of the players as well. But you look at what he was able to accomplish on film. He's just the ultimate opportunist, always seemed to be around the ball, fighting, competing for it. And I think that really bodes well for him at the next level, whether he's a slot guy.
He was a fifth-round pick.
Fifth-round pick. There you go. Jordan's giving me hand signals here, and he gave me the stop hand signal, but no, it's actually a 5.
There's a 5.
It was a 5. Yep. Thanks, Jordan.
You're welcome.
But no, I think he's in a position to, really succeed there. I obviously they have some other pieces in place if they can stay healthy with their one-star corner. And they've drafted some other secondary help last year. They need to continue to pan out. But I think he's a guy that can potentially contribute, whether maybe it's at safety, maybe it's at nickelback. But I think he can offer some real positive contributions pretty early.
Yeah, and there's a great little quote here from Dimitrov said, he's an addition to our secondary that's going to bring us up a notch as far as energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
that seems to be a running theme with their defensive picks so far. Huh?
Yeah. I mean, you add Tack McKinley and DeMonte because that's a whole lot of energy.
Yeah.
And playing style. Yeah. All right. They took next pick. They took another Mountain West guy, Brian Hill, running back. He's 220 pounds, so he's a lot bigger than some of these other running backs. And so I think you're going to see his contribution on special teams right away, more so than anything else. Don't you think, Josh? I mean, not to take anything away from the player, but I think that's probably where they're going to put him right away.
No, I definitely think so. I definitely think there's some of that. Obviously, they have a tremendous 1-2 punch at running back, but also his style is kind of counter to the two they have. So I think he does fit there. There may be times where he's eligible because of special teams, that he's actually active on game day because of that. And there might be times where they decide, we have some short yardage situations where we can put him in and spell the others two when we're simply looking for a yard or two here.
Yeah, he's a banger. I mean, they even call him an angry runner. So I think he sort of fits their mentality. And like you said, maybe he might be a little bit sort of a complementary skill set that he can come in off the bench and provide some carries. But at least, with that frame and that mentality and that speed, you get a good special teams player, right, I think, right off the bat. All right, next they went small school tight end Eric Saubert from Drake. I don't even know where Drake is. Where is Drake? Do you know where Drake is?
I do not know either.
Oh, I apologize to all our Drake alums out there.
They're going to be so mad.
They are. God, the Drake alums are the worst. All right, so they again liked him, big, tall, athletic tight end who can move. In that system, that's the F tight end. So again, he's a move tight end. He's not like a real inline blocking tight end. So I mean, for that aspect, good fit. I mean, for the little bits that I've seen of him. I guess it was a good pick. I mean, especially if you're going to go late. I honestly, as a draft strategy, Josh, sometimes I think that it's almost wise to intentionally go small school late. Maybe just like at least one pick should be like a small school guy. I'm not saying Drake, but anyways, that's just my own personal.
Drake
that's my own personal draft strategy. But anything you want to say there about Saubert, Josh?
No, I think it's going to be tough for him to make that roster. I mean, while they don't have any true standouts, obviously, they drafted one in the third round last year. They have some other guys like Toilolo still there. So, they have some pieces that place at the position already. And they mentioned how he's a move tight end, not a guy they really want inline blocking, which is probably generally the case when you have a small school kid coming in as a rookie anyway.
Drake.
But my guess is their hope for him is that he can make it to the practice squad this year and kind of develop his skill set there.
And it's possible for him to make it to the practice squad. But I mean, a lot of times with those move tight end guys that they try to get out there, get poached. They're like, oh, let me try to move this. Let me try to move this really tall, fast guy to the practice squad.
It's a funny situation, especially those guys. You got to kind of keep an eye on what they're doing in preseason, because there will be players that rookies in particular that'll have a big week 1, week 2. All of a sudden, week 3 of preseason comes along and they're not getting reps. And week 4, they got that little twinge of a hammy. It's just bothering them. They can't make it out there. I wonder why that is. So maybe that's the guy to watch out with. And
then successfully make it onto the practice squad because nobody saw him play. Yeah.
It's too bad for him. He had that minor twitch on that rep that kept him from playing the very next rep that he came back from.
What Josh is talking about is very true. There is gamesmanship that takes place among the pro personnel people in the NFL. Like you said, sometimes you got to try to stash these guys, Josh.
Yep, have to. It makes sense. I would.
All those hamstring injuries are legit. All right, moving forward, the Falcons, they're going to be aggressive pursuing players that they want early. Dimitrov's already shown that, Josh, with that Julio, with Trufant, with McKinley. I mean, he'll trade up and go get guys. They're basically really going to focus on guys that fit their scheme. Coaches are really going to be involved, so really going to be about scheme, culture, fit. And so that's what to look forward for them next year as we go forward.
Yeah, and when they did this with Julio, I thought that was a bit of a controversial pick. Not only because there are other players out there as well that year, obviously, but it's not like they had a full roster at that point to where they could be sacrificing picks like that. They needed to be able to fill other positions throughout that roster.
Are you saying they're in a different place now?
They're in a very different place now. That's what happens when you go to the Super Bowl and, again, are within a play or two of winning it all. So if they see that play, if they're picking, let's just say they're picking in the mid-20s, let's say they see a pit player around pick 10 or so that they really like, they can afford to go get him now because that might be the one missing link to them getting back to the Super Bowl and getting over that hump. I don't know at this point what that will be. Like I said, they have a lot of positions full of a lot of different things that they can do on both sides of the ball. But I would not be at all surprised to see them again attack the top half of that first round because they're in a good situation with that roster.
It's a very good point. It's also time to move on because I can't keep thinking about Thomas Dimitrov's amazing hair for much longer.
Threaten you. Yeah,
it does threaten me. It threatens me a lot. Much like Mike Renner's hair. And for those of you who don't know, I'm growing my hair out because I'm going to donate it, and my hair is gorgeous. But Dimitrov's hair is better than mine, and so's Renner's. So
you've got an element of Sideshow Bob without the actual dreads going. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I should be offended by the Sideshow Bob comment, Josh. I'm not totally sure yet, but I'll let it slide. We're going to move on to another front office. This front office actually lacks hair. This is the Houston Texans, who we're going to do an AFC South team. Rick Smith is their GM, and Bill O'Brien is the head coach. Both guys have been there, for a little while now. Looks like they have a pretty good working relationship. But this is, we keep going into all these different teams and their different strategies and things they had to deal with. And, Josh, there's always that talk about how, if you miss on a quarterback, it can really set a team back. Like if you miss on a quarterback in the draft, it can really set a team back. But it kind of looks like the Texans missed on a quarterback in free agency, and it's really setting them back.
Well, that's the money issue. And quite frankly, when that became a big issue with teams in the late aughts, early teens before the latest CBA was signed, that was a big part of the issue, is because they would draft these rookie quarterbacks so high and they'd receive these obscene contracts and then they'd be tied to them financially. And that's exactly what happened to Houston with Brock Osweiler, obviously. That typically you don't see quarterbacks come through free agency and certainly command the kind of dollars that Osweiler did. But obviously that failed. They not only were tied to that money in order to get rid of it, they had to jettison a second-round pick next year in order to dispose of him to Cleveland this year. So obviously that's hurt them. That's set them up poorly, not just going forward, but I think it handcuffed them just a bit in the draft. Obviously they were able to get up to the 10th pick of the first, or the 12th pick of the first round. to get Deshaun Watson. But I think also that hurt them in a sense too, because not only did that leave them with very little beyond that, but they even discussed about moving into the top 10 for him, but seeing the cost is too prohibitive to be able to do so. Now, there's a couple things with that quote, Jordan. First of all, obviously, that could be an issue of they didn't have the capital purely to get up that high. But I want to take issue with that, and here's why I have a problem with it. You look at the entire roster that the Houston Texans have. They have a lot of pieces there. Mm-hmm. Let's be honest, they were reasonable quarterback play away, just caretaker level quarterback play away from beating the Patriots in the playoffs. And obviously the Patriots went on to win it all. So there's no telling what Houston could have accomplished had they had that level of quarterback play. That's how good their defense was. Now you look fast forward to this year, that entire defense is back, and some guy named J.J. Watt that wasn't around at that point. So, I mean, this is an awfully good team that is just missing a quarterback. So them, as much as anybody else, if you have a guy, you have to be able to go get him. And when you make a comment that says, no, we didn't want to trade in top 10 for him, but we were fine with doing top 12, if that's anything but we physically could not move up there, we just didn't have enough capital, then I take issue with that, because you've already mortgaged everything to make that move up to 12. Whenever you take a quarterback that high, whether you're sitting pretty there or you're trading up as they did, you are saying this player is the future of our franchise, the face of the Houston Texans organization. So you have to be willing to move everything for this player. You have to be absolutely convinced that he's your guy. And when you say something like that, that makes me a little worried that they weren't that fully convinced, even though they were willing to invest so much in that pick.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I could say, in return is that maybe, like you mentioned, maybe the lack of next year's second rounder amounted to a lack of, adequate draft capital to get up there into the top 10, or, perhaps, because perhaps there are rumors that they did also like Patrick Mahomes somewhat. So maybe there was a two players thing that they would have been happy with either one of them, and so they just kind of waited to see and felt they could still get one at 12, which they did. But yeah, we don't know. But yeah, you're right. It does seem a little strange. But again, now next year, they had the cupboard's bare going into the draft next year, Josh. I mean, that second rounder's gone for Brock Osweiler to get him off the books, and then the first rounder's gone for part of the trade up to get to number 12. So, yeah, I mean that's brutal. So, I mean, not much draft capital at all for next year. So we really hope that Watson pans out, but if he doesn't, they're really set back. Because that's twice now that they basically missed on the most important position, and they don't really have the draft capital to make up for it. So, again, hopefully everything works out well for them. The players that they chose to focus on as far as like the attributes, again, college production was big for them. Like everybody, they like versatility. They keep taking players from Clemson, so they some of these NFL teams have these programs they like to keep going to, but yeah, the Texans keep going to Clemson, and they mentioned that they thought it was a good program. One of the other things I thought was interesting, Josh, is that they had the scouts and the coaches work together to rank the potential undrafted free agents. I thought that was kind of interesting. So I imagine maybe it's like a whole second board almost.
Yeah, and that makes sense, though, because ultimately with the undrafted free agents, you want guys to fill in, obviously, the back end of your roster. So you're going to have very, very specific finite roles for those guys. So it doesn't make sense to bring in, seventh and eighth running back that's going to have no shot at cracking the roster. You want a very specific set of skills, thanks, Liam Neeson, for those players right there. So that makes sense to me.
All right, so let's go to their specific players. Again, Deshaun Watson was their first pick, and again, he checks the character leadership box they're looking for, and he also checks that college production box that they're looking for. They think he's a guy who's overcome adversity in his life.
Yeah, there is one quote that I have to take issue with by Bill O'Brien. It's the stereotypical coach speak quote about quarterbacks. He's a winner. 33-5 as a college quarterback, national champion. None of that's wrong. That's absolutely true. However, Jordan, how many quarterbacks come into the league that were losers at the college level?
Not many that I can
seriously,
think of. Yeah.
Josh Freeman? I mean, Jay Cutler was 500 his last season at Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt was terrible, so I would consider that winning. I mean, Freeman was 3-9, I think, his final season at K-State, and that's the only one I can think of off the top of my head that's come in a quote-unquote loser as a college quarterback. I just think that's the most overused coach speak BS, and people just eat it up like, oh, that's everything. Well, guess what? They're all winners because they're playing at the college level. That doesn't make them winners or NFL players or whatnot. And I'm not saying that Deshaun Watson's not an NFL caliber quarterback. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying let's say something of value, or say something, or say nothing at all. You know, I just think a quote like that is just useless.
Well, the other thing too is that, again, football is the ultimate team sport, and although the position of the quarterback is sort of overvalued, it's not like Clemson's running out there with a bunch of scrubs and Deshaun Watson. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, like they drafted another guy off from that same team.
So in a sense, he's putting undue pressure on his rookie quarterback by saying something like that, especially considering, again, the structure of the rest of that roster. Because inevitably, yes, the blame probably will fall on the play of the quarterback if they don't go beyond where they did this past season. But I don't think that's something I really want to be putting on the quarterback right away. So I don't see the purpose of using jargon like that for that. I just think that's low-hanging fruit for media and fans. Anyways,
so they
I'm salty.
Yeah, you are. It's that all blocking's got you fired up.
Oh,
they met with Deshaun Watson at the Combine, and then they also had a facility visit with him, and he met with the entire offensive coaching staff. So again, that's quite different than when the Giants didn't even meet with Davis Webb.
Right.
But I mean, this was a first round pick. They might have
different expectations, you think?
Yeah. This is a first round pick, so again, a different amount of capital invested, but still they brought him in, met him with the whole offensive coaching staff. They're really impressed with his football IQ, with his recall, because they gave him specific plays or plays from his college career or things like that. So again, a lot to like about him, other than he was a quote unquote winner in college. All right. The next pick, they took Zach Cunningham, linebacker from Vanderbilt. And this was really funny to me because, we've had they've had like a stereotype of like pattern of guys that they've sort of drafted at that, at the linebacker position, Josh. And some guys that we would probably describe as sort of unathletic, like Benardrick McKinney or things like that. They just like sort of these really oversized guys who maybe weren't that, rangy or good in coverage, and then now Zach Cunningham. So so it's pretty funny, like the quote from Rick Smith there, about now they have a linebacker who can run and cover essentially. So it's interesting. I know that you really liked Cunningham, and what do you think he's going to do there?
Yeah, that quote, man. Not to keep being salty, but man, that one gets me too. Hopefully for their case, it's a bit of evidence that they've done a little bit of self-scouting and realized that obviously they're lacking in that respect. The other thing I want to point out is, how highly I thought of Zach Cunningham, and by all appearances, he's made a pretty quick impact on the field for them, and he's looking really good in training camp and preseason, and I think he's going to have a huge role for them. In part because of his versatility, his athleticism, his range, his ability to play inside and out. Those are all things that they talked about once they drafted him. Why was he available at this point in the second round? This guy had no business being there. It's no business. The exact quote was, he's got a unique skill set. Again, thanks to our good friend Liam Neeson. Actually, a skill set that we haven't had around at this position. Very athletic, long, rangy, versatile player, has some coverage ability. So this is everything a modern inside backer needs to be.
Right.
That's Cunningham. And one thing he didn't mention is his ability to thump and take on blocks, which is the old school linebacker that everybody still loves. So I guess because it's perceived that guys like Jared Davis are better leaders on and off the field, or might have a little more intelligence, a little more ready to immediately wear the green dot in their helmet, that makes them 20 plus picks higher in this draft, even though the production isn't even close. I don't know. I can't figure it out. The short of it is, I think Zach Cunningham is going to make a lot of the league look really stupid for passing on him. I think he's going to be a great player, and obviously he's set up to succeed with that line in front of him in Houston. I just think he's going to be a big-time player for him.
Fair enough. And they said that he can play in base defense and he can play on third down. So you're already talking about a third down backer. But yeah, I just thought, I started laughing when I heard Rick Smith say that quote, just because, he said it's a skill set that we haven't had around at that position. I was laughing. I said, yeah, because you haven't drafted it.
Right.
That's why you haven't had it around, because you've been drafting the big lumbering linebackers.
It's been almost intentional, right?
Yeah. And I think it has. So yeah, it was just interesting to see if, and I don't know if it's, they just really loved the player and what he can bring, or if they're now starting to realize that they need some more, starting to draft a bit more speed at that position, like a lot of other teams are. All right, their next pick, they took Dante Foreman, the running back from Texas. They see him right away as like the sort of RB2 to Lamar Miller. And I thought this was interesting, Josh, because we always mentioned the people need to be 3-down players. They don't really view Foreman as a 3-down back, Josh. They just see him as a first and second down back. I think I can kind of see that, but it just seems odd to take a first and second down back in the third round.
Especially when you have a guy that's already there that's perceived as the top guy. I think ultimately when you read quotes like that, writing's on the wall for Lamar Miller. He better put up, because I think they have every intention. When you spend a third-round pick on a running back, you intend to play him on first and second down. You intend to get him touches and carries, and not just the 3 or 4 a game just to keep a guy rested. If he's going to be playing and it's not going to be on third down, well, that means he's taking carries away from Lamar Miller. So Miller better put up very quickly, or he's going to see his production go down and volume go down considerably. Yeah,
and it looks like they have a very specific role in mind for Foreman. These quotes are like first and second down back, very productive inside runner, tackle-to-tackle runner. So
yeah,
they really sound like they want to slam him up in the middle.
Worth pointing out that obviously I railed on him for the he's a winner quote with Deshaun Watson. Some very honest quotes with the next 2 picks with Foreman and Cunningham. So have to appreciate that at least. But I think you see there's a clear direction with both of these players.
When we were talking about the Falcons earlier and the local workouts, the Texans had Foreman came to the local pro day workout thing there. And they were really impressed by that, because he was basically one of, if not the highest rated player there. And a lot of times those guys tend to not go to those workouts. There's not much value for them there, but Foreman went and Foreman competed, and they were really impressed by that. And I think that really factored into the selection.
Yeah, we talked about with the other team, we discussed about how in Atlanta, that's a really good local pro day because there's a lot of local talent there. Houston being similar as well. I also wonder if this is a case of good agent play as well. Him understanding that, hey, this is something that they value. This is something they're going to be at.
Could be.
This is a good place for you to go, because it's a franchise that's winning right now, and it's a place where you could have a chance at playing based on how Lamar Miller does. This is a really good situation for you. Don't have to go far from home to do it. Why don't we send you to this thing to work out for them as well? Another chance for them to see you and talk to you as well. I think that's good agent play as well.
And look at Josh breaking out his agent brain. You're all ready to go with your agent strategies.
All of them.
Man, when I have a kid, or if I ever have a kid, I'll have him sign with your agency. The Liskowitz Talent Agency.
If you ever have a kid, I'm calling social services immediately.
That poor neglected child. Hey, you know what? He/she will be able to recognize a lot of football stuff at a very young age on film. So they might not be able to read, but they'll be breaking down film.
They'll know 2 letters. They'll know X and they'll know O. That's it.
All right.
The ABCs they know.
Moving on from my non-existent children to Julian Davenport, who's a small school tackle. They saw him at the Senior Bowl. I mean, I don't recall, Josh. I mean, I don't recall him really standing out as far as his performance goes. You know, some of the other small school guys really stand out. I mean, I don't know if I saw him like. I don't think he struggled, but you know, again, he didn't really stand out to me there. Did he stand out to you there?
No, he didn't. I thought it was funny that they said, well, he competed well at the Senior Bowl. Sometimes that's code for, he got chewed up and spit out. But no, in all seriousness, though, ultimately that's what you want to see there. I mean, yes, there's going to be guys that are going to stand out and really make a name for themselves. That are from small schools, and we've talked about quite a few of them throughout the summer, and certainly has been some in the years past. And while that might not have been the case for Davenport, the fact that they felt he was competitive, that's important as well, and as important as his production there was. We've certainly seen small school kids in the past, or at least I have, Jordan, when I've been there, that have essentially just quit. As someone who's still in the league, floating around, he will remain nameless. But there was some question as to whether he was a guard or a tackle, and went to Senior Bowl and started out playing guard. They kicked him out to tackle for a couple of reps in one-on-one drills, got his ass whooped a couple times, and he was pleading with the coaches to move him back inside the guard. So that's the opposite of what you want to see in that kind of situation. So good to at least hear that at that base level, Davenport performed, and obviously he got drafted with a fairly reasonable high pick too, so it was a good experience for him. Must have been.
You guys should see Josh at the Senior Bowl practices. It's funny because he likes to get so close to the one-on-one pass rush drills. Where he's like in the pit. Like we basically just should strap a GoPro to his forehead because he's in there getting hit by bits of spit and tape and grass, and he loves it. I don't know, he probably ought to get run over a couple times, but yeah, Josh loves getting in there with the pit drill.
I do. It might be a little bit tougher next year if I keep all my weight I've lost off, though, because usually I'm about the old lineman size, so I'm okay. But but I should have a little bit more nimbleness to get out of the way.
There
so
you go.
Hopefully that'll pan out.
Quick feet, Josh. Quick feet. All right, their last pick they took was one of your pit guys there, Carlos Watkins, a defensive tackle from Clemson. Kind of can play up and down, versatile, productive. They said he's got twitch, he's got inside pass rush ability, he's got versatility to play inside or outside. But we know that pass rush ability, up the gut there is really valuable, Josh. And they seem to like his production, especially his pass rush production.
Yeah, you said it. The inside pass rush ability, that's key for them. And you think about the rest of that roster structure, certainly Clowney and Water very capable of going inside, but having a guy like Watkins that can throw in there pretty much full-time on third down and fully use the versatility of those two studs on the outside, I think that's a big get for them if he can perform up to that level.
I agree. All right, the next player they took was Treston Deku. He's a long press corner from Oregon State. Played really well last year out in my neck of the woods. They see him as a press corner, but they can also see him as someone who can play safety. He's got that sort of length and range, an aggressive tackler. A lot to like about Deku. And then Josh, they finished up with Kyle Fuller, a center from Baylor.
Mm-hmm. Yep, like his positional flexibility, that's important, and certainly a team that they might have spots open on the line, but I don't think they're in dire need at a specific position. It's a matter of who's going to fit in where and who's going to be healthy. But certainly his ability to play multiple positions, I think that's going to help him make this roster. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him at some point get some reps in as well, whether it be due to injury or due to quality play on his part.
All right, now forecasting the Texans for the upcoming draft. As we mentioned, Josh, they have no draft capital. I don't know. They're going to have to make a trade, I think, to try to maybe generate some more picks. So, again, they don't have a first-round pick, and they don't have a second-round pick going into the 2018 draft. So they're definitely going to have to do something. And again, that's is why it's so important, I think, for Deshaun Watson to really pan out for them, whether that's, in the next couple games or, whether or not he has a red shirt, sitting year. But that investment needs to pan out because they have just so much in loss of draft capital going forward. Okay, Josh, it is time now, because we love the rookies, and the rookies are starting to play now that preseason has kicked off. So it is time for our new segment called Rookie Review, where we are basically going to tell you guys how, some of the top rookies have been performing. It's no secret if you watched any of the games last week. Mitch Trubisky, the rookie quarterback for the Bears, performed really well. Josh, I think he was one of our highest graded quarterbacks last week. I thought Patrick Mahomes looked really good too, another first rounder making plays. Derek Barnett, another first rounder that we were high on, had like 2 sacks. So, the first rounders made a lot of noise, Josh, but I think we want to try to sort of keep an eye on some of the guys who weren't first rounders. And we'll start with, I guess, a quarterback there, Josh, with Deshaun Kaiser. He had a pretty good game, don't you think?
Yeah, he really did. His grade of 83.0, that was number 3 among all quarterbacks. Maybe we weren't expecting quite as much from him. Certainly, obviously, because if you just look at the fact that he was the 4th guy taken, he was the one of the 4 that was left out of the first round. But there's a lot to like about what he did. Certainly, his downfield passing was excellent. You saw a little bit of his maneuverability, but on his downfield passes, his passes that were at least 10 yards downfield through the air, perfect 158.3 quarterback rating. So awfully impressive start for Deshaun Kaiser.
Yeah, it was. And we'll kind of do these reviews for you guys on a weekly basis. So we expect these rookies to fluctuate, in their performance, especially in these preseason games, because I think imagine it's going to shift dramatically how much reps they get, especially if some of them start to develop the phantom injuries like we mentioned before.
Yeah, and one note to make on Kaiser, it looks like he's moved up to number 2 possibly on the depth chart I saw yesterday. So certainly something to watch out there. That's a very, very fluid situation in Cleveland that I think could adjust week to week. Any of those 3 guys could end up being the starter, but certainly an excellent start for the rookie. We'll see if that continues and if he continues to climb up the depth chart.
Another rookie who had an excellent start and appears to be climbing up the depth chart, kind of surprising to us really, is Kenny Golladay, the Lions' 3rd-round pick. Man, he looked like a boss, Josh.
Yeah, he did. He's really interesting, and I hope this continues, and it can kind of be a lesson where we go back and watch the film and figure out exactly what we saw, because a lot of the good things we saw out of him on Sunday, I say morning, but that's because I was on the West Coast for that, as well as you. But a lot of the good things we saw from him are things we didn't see, and things that we were rather critical of him at Northern Illinois in terms of, yes, he timed well at the combine, but he didn't really show that playing speed, didn't really show consistent ability to separate, and wasn't consistent with the ball in the air and in 50-50 balls, and he absolutely dismantled everything last week with that. And he had obviously the 2 scores. They were, one was back shoulder, one was front shoulder. Just really gave Quincy Wilson, 2nd-round corner that we were very high on for the Colts, really gave him fits. And Galladay's another guy that this week he started to get reps with the ones. And you think about all the pieces Detroit has in that offense. What they're lacking now, obviously, a year removed from Calvin Johnson retiring, is that X receiver, that reliable outside target. And boy, if he's ready to perform like that, and he can do that on a consistent basis, not just preseason week 1, that's a huge, huge get for them. So I'm interested to see if he can keep that going. And for all the good things we've been hearing out of him in camp, he sure looked as advertised on Sunday.
He did. He looked like a grown man out there.
Yep.
I was just like, just out bodying people, being more physical than people. Really impressive. You only had 28 snaps, so we'll see how it goes next week. But yeah, good start there for Golladay. Another receiver, Josh, who had a great start there too was Mac Hollins, the wide receiver that the Eagles took. In a lot of people thought that he was basically just going to be a size, speed, special teams type guy, but we know from going inside the war room and listening to why they drafted him that they really view Hollins as a guy who can start one day.
Yeah, I really think so, and certainly we thought so at PFF, a favorite of Bryson Vesnaver as well as many other PFFers, and he certainly performed the other day. He had an awesome 38 highlight reel touchdown that was really one of the better. Yeah, multiple stiff arms, showed his speed on the play as well, showed his route running ability. I think he broke 3 tackles, had a perfect passer rating when targeted, 158.3. So obviously that's usually pretty good when quarterback's having perfection when he's throwing it your way. So excellent start for him, and very encouraging when you have obviously a young quarterback like they do in Carson Wentz, and you have a young playmaker like that immediately stepping up. So looking forward to seeing more from Mac Hollins and how that relationship with Carson Wentz develops.
Agreed. Another speed offensive rookie who stood out last week was D'Angelo Henderson, the Broncos' 6th-round pick. He was one of the guys that they drafted, Josh, if you recall. They wanted to get juice in the middle of the field is what they said. They wanted speed, in the slot and at the running back position. And, man, does Henderson have some speed at the running back position. He was definitely out there, running around people, forced 4 missed tackles, looked really good. What did you like from Henderson?
Yeah, those missed tackles kind of translates to his yards after contact as well, 4.29 yards after contact, which is excellent. I thought he was really impressive in that regard, and you mentioned it with the speed. That position, they've kind of lacked a level of dynamicism there the last couple of seasons, and I think there's potential that he could bring that, and certainly history has shown that running backs, it doesn't necessarily matter where they're drafted or what their name is, that they seem to translate quicker to the next level. So hopefully they found a little something there with D'Angelo Henderson, and that can take the pressure off what's obviously a rough quarterback situation in Denver.
Yeah, no doubt. And he was fun to watch, last week. All right, the next player that we definitely need to talk about was Elijah Qualls, the Eagles defensive lineman. He's a guy who we know can play defensive tackle or defensive end. I didn't really look to see all the ways that they were using him at all, but I mean, just looking at his grades, he had an 89.1 overall grade, and he was had a pretty dominant pass rushing performance. What did you see from Qualls, Josh?
Yeah, that was a game that I actually graded, so I got a real good look at him, and he was, if I remember correctly, he was almost exclusively on the inside in that. I mean, Philly just has a plethora of outside rushers, and you've already mentioned Derek Barnett, and certainly there were a couple others that came up big on the outside for Philly as well. But Qualls was almost exclusively on the inside, and Green Bay had a real tough time trying to block him. I mean, basically he could do whatever he wanted. He showed quickness off the ball. He showed power. He had a number of moves with his hands. 17.9 pass rush productivity ranking was 4th among all defensive interior players last weekend, and 5 total pressures, as you said. So real impressive week from him. And when you think about that line and what they already have with Cox and Brandon Graham and some of those other guys, they are really, really loaded. And if they can get another interior guy with him, boy, that's going to be a tough team to get passes off on, because they are just all over the place in terms of their pass rush.
Yeah, seriously, like you said, that'd be a pretty scary combo of inside and outside there. They're doing a really good job of building up the what they view as the identity of their team, their defensive line.
Yeah.
Staying with the defensive lineman, Josh, we'll go out west to Tanzel Smart, the 6th-round pick out of Tulane for the Rams. Played 37 snaps, which is, that's a bit more than Elijah Qualls got to play, but I think he's playing 37 snaps because Aaron Donald's not there. So I think he's getting a chance to sort of take advantage of that. And I know that he was a guy that we liked coming out. What did you see from Smart as far as his 37 snaps last week?
Yeah, I thought he was advertised. He was, real disruptive player. He's got that size, power, speed combination you want on the inside. And I think what we've seen in the past from the Rams interior guys opposite Aaron Donald is just a lot of space occupation where they're just trying to occupy multiple blocks, trying to free him up, get him in single man situations where I'm sure there'll be some of that was smart, but the fact that he is able to offer some true pass rush ability of his own, I think that just, again, like the Eagles, that makes the Rams so difficult to deal with if they have another interior rusher like Smart looks like he is, because, boy, when they're coming at you from all angles and you can't just give attention to one or two guys, you have to account for all of them. That really makes things difficult on offensive lines.
Yeah, with Wade Phillips, I love his defenses. And he's a fun coach to watch. All right, well that'll do it for the rookie review there, guys, and then we are done for this week. Again, we've got a bunch of preseason games to watch. So keep an eye on those rookies. Josh and I will be back next week to wrap up the position previews. We're going to talk safeties and tight ends, and then we'll be basically kind of be rolling on into the season. So really excited about that. Again, leave us a 5-star rating and review with your email or Twitter handle, and you will be eligible to win a PFF Edge subscription, or I'm sorry, PFF Elite subscription. And Josh, anything you want to say on the way out?
I'm looking forward to all this preseason action this week, and next week, man, college football is starting up.
Woohoo!
How exciting is that?
Very exciting.
We've made it, fam. We've made it.
Talk to you guys next week.